The judge smiled when he denied the bail, thought the cage would hold him, but power doesn't need freedom to move. And what came next made that judge beg to disappear. The courtroom smells like old wood and fear. Not the kind of fear that makes you run. The kind that sits in your chest when you know the game is rigged before you even walked in. Big Meech stands between two marshals, wrists cuffed, ankles chained, orange jumpsuit that doesn't fit the man inside it. He doesn't look at the gallery, doesn't look at the prosecutors whispering to each other like they already won. He looks at the judge. Judge Richard Pelham, 58 years old, 23 years on the bench. Clean record, clean reputation. The kind of man who speaks about justice like it's something he believes in. But Meech knows better. He's been in enough rooms to read the air, and this air is already decided. The prosecutor stands, talks about flight risk, talks about the scope of the organization, talks about violence, drug trafficking, conspiracy, throws around numbers, hundreds of kilos, millions of dollars, multi-state operations. Makes it sound like Meech is running an army. Meech's lawyer stands next, talks about community ties, family, no prior convictions of violence, willingness to surrender his passport, proposes a bond, proposes house arrest, proposes anything that keeps a man out of a cage while he fights. The judge listens, or pretends to. When the lawyer finishes, there's a pause, just long enough for everyone to believe this might be fair. Then Judge Pelham leans forward. "Mr. Flenory," he says, voice calm, almost fatherly. "The court has reviewed the government's evidence, the scope of the alleged enterprise, the risk you pose to the community." Meech doesn't move. Bail is denied. 3 words, delivered with a small smile, not obvious, just enough for someone paying attention to catch it. Meech catches it. The marshals step closer. The lawyer starts to object, but the judge is already moving to the next case. Gavel down. Done. Meech turns, lets them guide him toward the side door. He doesn't look back at the prosecutors celebrating quietly, doesn't look at his family in the gallery, faces tight with anger and grief. He looks at the judge one more time, and the judge looks away. That's the tell, not the denial, not the legal language. The fact that a man who just made a decision won't hold eye contact with the man he made it against. Meech knows what that means. Someone got to him first. The van ride back to the detention center is silent. Marshals up front don't talk. Meech sits alone in the cage, hands still cuffed, staring out the small window at the city moving past. Atlanta, his city, not because he was born here, because he built here. Because when he and his brother started moving weight, they didn't just sell product, they created culture, music, fashion, presence. They made BMF a name people said with respect, not fear. And now a judge who's never spent a day in the streets just decided Meech doesn't get to fight his case from the outside. The van pulls into the facility. Concrete walls, razor wire. Guards who don't care about your name or your history. You're a number here, a body in a cell. They process him back in. Strip search, new jumpsuit, walk him down the tier. Cell 23, 8 by 10 feet. Bed bolted to the wall. Steel toilet. Sink that drips. One small window with glass so thick you can barely see the sky. The door closes behind him. And for the first time in years, Big Meech is alone. Completely alone. Most men would break here, would rage, would punch walls, or scream or spiral into desperation. Meech sits on the edge of the bed and thinks, power isn't about movement, it's about influence. You can take a man's freedom, lock him in a box, strip him of his phone, his cars, his access. But if his name still moves, he's not powerless. Meech learned that from the old heads, the ones who ran things in Detroit before the game went federal. They taught him that respect isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the kind of thing that travels through walls, through phone lines, through loyalty, that doesn't need a contract. He built BMF on that principle. And now, sitting in a cell, He's about to prove it still applies. He doesn't need to be outside to move pieces. He just needs people to remember who he is. That night, during phone privileges, Meech makes one call. Not to his lawyer, not to his brother, to a man named Eric. Eric's been with BMF since the beginning. Not flashy, not a lieutenant. Just solid. The kind of man who listens more than he talks and never forgets an instruction. The phone rings twice. "Yeah, it's me." Silence. Then, "You good?" "I'm where I need to be," Meech says. Calm. No frustration in his voice. "But I need you to do something." "Say it." "Judge Pelham, Richard Pelham, federal courthouse. Find out everything. Where he lives, where he eats, what time he leaves the house, who he talks to. I don't want action. I want information." Eric doesn't ask why. "How soon?" "Yesterday." Done. The call ends. Meech hangs up the receiver, walks back to his cell, lies down on the thin mattress, and waits. Because power isn't about speed, it's about inevitability. 3 days pass. Most inmates count time by meals. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, lights out, repeat. Meech counts it by movement. Information is currency in here, more valuable than commissary, more powerful than connections on the outside. And if you know how to listen, these walls talk. He doesn't push, doesn't ask loud questions, just observes. The guard who works the morning shift, Officer Hendricks, walks with a limp, takes smoke breaks at the same time every day. Complains about his mortgage loud enough for anyone to hear. The inmate in cell 19, Curtis, gets visits every Tuesday. His girl brings their daughter, 3 years old. He tears up every time they leave. The tier porter, a guy named Malik, moves with purpose, collects trash, mops floors, but also passes kites. Little folded notes that travel between cells, between tiers, between facilities, if you know the right people. Meech knows the right people. On the 4th day, during rec time in the yard, Malik approaches, doesn't walk straight to him, circles first, plays it natural, leans against the fence a few feet away, watching a basketball game that nobody's really playing. "Heard you was looking for something," Malik says. Doesn't look at Meech, just talks into the air. "Might be. Word is, you got reach." Meech watches the game. A missed layup. Somebody laughs. Word travels, Meech says. Malik nods, waits a beat. "I got people on the outside. Need work, clean work, the kind that pays steady." "What kind of people?" "The kind that don't ask questions, do what's needed, and don't forget who looked out." Meech turns his head slightly, not enough to draw attention, just enough to meet Malik's eyes for half a second. "I'll remember that," Meech says. Malik pushes off the fence, walks away like they never spoke. But the connection is made. That night, Meech writes a letter, not to his lawyer, not to family, to a woman named Tasha. Tasha runs a salon in Buckhead. High-end. The kind of place where wives of lawyers and businessmen get their hair done, drink mimosas, talk too much. She's also been washing BMF money for 6 years. The letter is short, coded. Talks about needing updates on the business. Asks how the clients are doing. Mentions that he's heard some concerns about service quality and wants to make sure everyone's still happy. Anyone reading it would think it's about a salon, but Tasha will know. She'll know he's asking about the network, about who's still loyal, about whether the structure held after the arrests. And she'll respond the same way, coded, careful, clean. Meech seals the envelope, hands it to the guard during mail call. The machine is turning again. A week in, Meech gets his first visitor, not family, not his lawyer, a man named Terrell. Terrell's older, mid-50s, graying beard, moves slow, talks slower. He's been around since the Detroit days. Not a soldier, more like a historian, the kind of man who remembers every deal, every conversation, every move that mattered. He sits across from Meech in the visitation room, bulletproof glass between them, phones to their ears. "You look good," Terrell says. "I look locked up." Terrell smiles, thin, sad. How's the outside? Meech asks. Still spinning. Some people nervous, some people trying to step up. Nobody filling the space right, though. They don't have the vision. They will. Just need time. Terrell leans forward slightly. Eric came by. Said you got him working on something. Meech doesn't react, just listens. He found what you asked for. Judge Pelham. Lives in Druid Hills. Big house, quiet street. Drives a black Lexus. Leaves for the courthouse every morning at 7:15. Stops at the same coffee shop on Ponce. Comes home around 6. Predictable. Family? Wife. 2 kids. Both in college. Out of state. Meech nods slowly. Takes it in. Anything else? Terrell glances around. Lowers his voice even though no one's close enough to hear through the glass. Eric also found out the judge had a visit 3 weeks before your bail hearing. Man came to his chambers. Not a lawyer, not official, private. They talked for 20 minutes. Eric still working on the name. Meech feels it click. Someone bought the judge, or pressured him. Either way, the decision wasn't about law. It was about leverage. Tell Eric to keep looking. But quiet, no noise. He knows. And Terrell? Yeah? Make sure people know I'm still here. Not gone. Just paused. Terrell smiles again. This time it's real. They already know, Meech. They already know. The visits continue. Lawyer meetings. Family calls. Each one another thread in the web. Meech's lawyer, David Chesnoff, brings updates on the case. Discovery. Witness lists. Potential trial dates. All the legal machinery grinding forward. But Meech is playing a different game. He's not just fighting in court. He's reminding the world that a man in a cell can still move mountains if the foundation's strong enough. Every phone call is a message. Every letter is a signal. Every visit is a reinforcement. The network didn't collapse when he got arrested. It bent, adjusted, and now it's responding to his hand again, even from behind concrete and steel. 2 weeks in, during chow, an inmate Meech's never spoken to slides into the seat across from him. Young kid, maybe 25, tattoos up his neck, eyes that have seen too much too soon. You Big Meech? The kid asks. Meech looks at him. Doesn't answer. The kid shifts. Nervous but trying not to show it. My cousin's from Detroit. He said you're the real thing. Said if I ever ran into you, I should show respect. Meech takes a bite of the tasteless potatoes on his tray. What's your name? Javon. What are you in for, Javon? Distribution. First offense. They trying to give me 8 years. Meech nods. Chews slowly. You got people on the outside? My girl. My mom. That's it. They visit? When they can. Money's tight. Meech looks at him for a long moment. Sees himself at that age. Hungry. Angry. Trying to figure out how the game works while the system tries to bury you. You keep your head down in here. Don't get caught up in the politics. Do your time smart. And when you get out, you come find me. Yafom blinks. How am I supposed to? You'll find me. And when you do, I'll make sure you don't have to come back. Javon stares. Doesn't know what to say. Meech stands. Picks up his tray. Respect goes both ways, Javon. Remember that. He walks away. But the seed is planted. Because legacy isn't just about what you did. It's about what you leave behind. The people you touch. The lives you change. Even from a cell. That night, lying on his bunk, Meech stares at the ceiling. The dripping sink. The hum of the ventilation. The distant sound of someone yelling 3 tiers down. This place is designed to break you. To make you feel small, powerless, forgotten. But Meech doesn't feel small. He feels patient. Because outside these walls, the pieces are moving. Eric's gathering information. Tasha's keeping the network alive. Terrell's spreading the word. And somewhere in Druid Hills, Judge Richard Pelham is starting to feel something he hasn't felt in a long time. Fear. Not the kind you see coming. The kind that creeps in slow. That makes you check your rearview mirror twice. that makes you wonder if the car parked across the street has been there before. Meech doesn't need to touch him. He just needs him to know he could. And that's enough. Judge Richard Pelham doesn't believe in omens. He believes in law, precedent, order. But 3 weeks after denying Big Meech's bail, he starts noticing things. Small things. The kind of things you tell yourself don't mean anything. It starts with a car. Black Dodge Charger. Tinted windows. Parked across the street from his house when he leaves for work one morning. Pelham notices it because it's new. His neighborhood is old money. Quiet. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone's car. A Charger with dark tints doesn't belong. He pauses at his mailbox, glances over. The engine's running. He can see the exhaust in the cold morning air. But no one gets out. No one moves. He tells himself it's nothing. Someone waiting to pick up a friend. A contractor starting early. He gets in his Lexus and drives to work. In his rearview mirror, the Charger doesn't follow. 2 days later, it's there again. Same spot. Same tints. Same idling engine. This time, Pelham doesn't pause, just gets in his car and leaves. But he checks the mirror more than usual on the drive. At the courthouse, everything is normal. Cases, motions, lawyers arguing over discovery. The rhythm of the system grinding forward like it always does. Pelham sits on the bench and feels safe here. This is his world, his authority. In this room, he's untouchable. But during a recess, his clerk, a sharp young woman named Andrea, brings him his coffee and a strange look. "Everything okay?" Pelham asks. She hesitates. "This is probably nothing," she says. "But someone called the main line this morning asking for you. Wouldn't give a name. Just asked what time you usually leave for the day." Pelham sets down his coffee. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. I said you're not available and hung up. But it felt weird." Pelham nods, forces a smile. "Probably a reporter. Don't worry about it." But he does worry about it, because reporters don't ask what time a judge goes home. That evening, Pelham takes a different route. Not the usual straight shot down Ponce to Druid Hills. He loops through side streets. Takes an extra 10 minutes. Checks his mirror the whole way. Nothing. When he pulls into his driveway, the Charger isn't there. He exhales. Feels ridiculous. His wife, Susan, is in the kitchen making dinner. Their dog, a golden retriever named Scout, trots over, tail wagging. Normal. Safe. Pelham pours himself a bourbon. Sits in his study. Tries to read a brief for tomorrow's docket. But he keeps glancing at the window. The next morning, the Charger is back. Same spot. Same tints. This time, Pelham doesn't get in his car right away. He stands on his porch, coffee in hand, staring at it, waiting for it to move. It doesn't. He considers walking over, knocking on the window, asking who the hell they are and what they want. But something stops him. Instinct. Or fear. Instead, he gets in his Lexus and drives to work. The Charger still doesn't follow. And that's what bothers him most. If they wanted to follow him, they would. But they're not following. They're just there. A presence. A reminder. At lunch, Pelham meets a colleague, Judge Marianne Cross, at a Thai place downtown. They've known each other for 15 years. She's sharp. No nonsense. The kind of judge who doesn't scare easily. Halfway through the meal, Pelham brings it up. "You ever feel like you're being watched?" Marianne looks at him over her pad thai. "Watched how?" "I don't know. Just a car outside my house. Phone calls to my clerk. It's probably nothing." She sets down her fork. "Which case?" Pelham hesitates. "Why do you assume it's a case?" "Because that's the only reason someone watches a judge, Richard." "Which case?" He exhales. "Flenory. Big Meech. Denied bail 3 weeks ago." Marianne's expression shifts. Not fear, just recognition. "That's a heavy one." "I know. You getting threats?" "No. Not directly. Just pressure. The kind you feel but can't prove." Marianne leans back. Studies him. "You want my advice? That's why I'm here. Document everything. Every car. Every call. Every weird moment. And if it escalates, you report it. Bureau takes threats against federal judges seriously. It's not a threat, though. That's the thing. It's just presence. Marianne nods slowly. That's how it starts. That night, Pelham doesn't sleep well. He lies in bed, listening to the house settle, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the distant sound of a car passing. Susan's asleep beside him, breathing steady. But Pelham's mind is running. He thinks about Big Meech, about the bail hearing, about the way Meech looked at him before the marshals took him away. No anger, no desperation, just calm, like he already knew what was coming next. Pelham tells himself he made the right call. The evidence was overwhelming. Meech is a flight risk, a danger to the community. But deep down, in a place he doesn't want to admit exists, he knows the truth. He didn't deny bail because of the evidence. He denied it because someone asked him to. 3 weeks before the hearing, a man came to Pelham's chambers. Not a lawyer, not official, no appointment, just a man in a good suit, with a quiet voice and eyes that didn't blink enough. He said his name was Mitchell. Didn't offer a last name. He sat down without being invited. Judge Pelham, he said. I represent some people with a vested interest in the Flenory case. I don't discuss pending cases, Pelham said. Mitchell smiled. I'm not here to discuss. I'm here to clarify expectations. Pelham should have ended it there. Should have called security. But he didn't. Mitchell leaned forward. Bail will be denied, he said. You'll cite flight risk, scope of the enterprise, danger to the community, all valid legal reasons, but the outcome is not negotiable. You're asking me to. I'm not asking. Silence. Mitchell stood, adjusted his cufflinks. You have a beautiful home, Judge. Druid Hills, right? Your wife's garden is lovely this time of year. And your daughter Emily, is it? Doing well at Chapel Hill? Pelham's blood went cold. Mitchell smiled again. Just making conversation. Have a good day, Judge. And he left. Pelham never told anyone, not his wife, not his clerk, not the bureau, because he knew what it meant. If he reported it, if he fought back, the threats would become real. So he did what Mitchell wanted. Denied bail, used all the right legal language, convinced himself it was justified, and told himself he'd never think about it again. But now, lying in bed, listening to the silence, he realizes something. Mitchell's people aren't the only ones watching anymore. The next morning, the charger is gone. Pelham feels a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief, because maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was paranoid. Dread because he knows better. He drives to work. Same route, same coffee stop on Ponce. Everything's normal, until he walks into the courthouse and sees Andrea at her desk, pale. What's wrong? He asks. She hands him a manila envelope. This was on my desk when I got in. No return address. No postage. Someone hand-delivered it. Pelham takes it, feels the weight. He goes into his chambers, closes the door, opens the envelope. Inside, 3 photographs. The first his house, taken from across the street, clear, recent. The second him at the coffee shop on Ponce, ordering his usual, taken through the window. The third Susan in the garden, kneeling by the roses, smiling. No note, no message, just the photos. Pelham sits down. His hands are shaking. He thinks about Mitchell, about the charger, about the phone calls, and he realizes what's happening. Big Meech didn't make a threat. He didn't have to. He just let Pelham know that walls don't protect you. That power doesn't stop at a cell door. That a man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind of enemy. That afternoon, Pelham drafts a letter. Not to the bureau, not to law enforcement, to the chief judge, requesting a transfer, citing personal security concerns. He doesn't name Meech, doesn't explain the photos, just says he feels unsafe continuing in his current assignment. It's vague, professional, cowardly, but it's the only move he has left, because he knows now. You can sit on a bench and play God, but some men don't respect the robe. They respect power, And right now, locked in a cell, Big Meech has more of it than he does. The transfer request sits on Chief Judge Harold Brennan's desk for 2 days. He reads it 3 times. Each time, he gets more confused. Richard Pelham is a 23-year veteran. Solid reputation. No history of complaints. No scandals. The kind of judge you forget about because he just does the work. And now he's asking for a transfer because of security concerns. No details. No incident report. No police involvement. Just fear. Brennan picks up the phone. Richard, it's Harold. Got your letter. Silence on the other end. Then, yes, you want to tell me what this is really about? Another pause. I just think it's time for a change. A change. In the middle of a major federal case. I can brief my replacement. Everything's documented. Brennan leans back in his chair. Richard, if someone threatened you, you need to report it. We have protocols. No one threatened me. Then what's the security concern? Pelham's voice tightens. I just don't feel safe. Brennan frowns. Safe from what? I can't explain it, Harold. I just need this transfer. Brennan hears something in his voice. Not panic. Something quieter. Resignation. I'll take it under advisement, Brennan says. But you need to understand this doesn't look good. Requesting a transfer mid-case raises questions. I understand. Do you? Silence. Brennan sighs. I'll get back to you. He hangs up and sits there, staring at the letter, wondering what the hell Richard Pelham is running from. At home, Pelham is unraveling. He doesn't tell Susan about the photos. Doesn't want to scare her, but she notices anyway. You've been quiet, she says over dinner. Just work. You're always working. This is different. He looks at her. Wants to tell her. Wants to explain that their safe, predictable life is being pulled apart by forces he can't control, but he doesn't. I'm fine, he says. She doesn't believe him. The charger doesn't come back, but other things do. A week after the photos, Pelham's at the coffee shop on Ponce. Same routine, same order. The barista hands him his cup. Smiles. Have a good day, Judge. Pelham freezes. He's been coming here for 3 years. Never told them he's a judge. Always pays cash. No name on the order. How do you know I'm a judge? He asks. The barista blinks. Someone mentioned it. I don't remember who. When? I don't know. A few days ago? Pelham takes the coffee, walks out. His hand is shaking so hard he spills some on the sidewalk. 2 days later, his car won't start. He turns the key. Nothing. Not even a click. He pops the hood, checks the battery. Everything looks fine. Calls a mechanic. The guy shows up an hour later. Checks the engine. Frowns. Battery cables are loose, he says. Real loose. Like someone disconnected them and didn't tighten them back up. Pelham stares at him. Someone tampered with my car? The mechanic shrugs. Or they came loose on their own. It happens. But Pelham knows better. Nothing just happens anymore. At the courthouse, he starts seeing faces. Not the same faces, different ones, but always watching. A man in the gallery during a hearing. Doesn't take notes. Doesn't react. Just watches. A woman in the lobby, sitting. Not waiting for anyone. Just there. A young guy outside the building, leaning against the wall. Smoking. Eyes following Pelham as he walks to his car. None of them do anything. That's the point. They don't have to. Pelham starts taking different routes home. Changes his coffee shop. Leaves work at random times. But it doesn't matter, because the message has already been delivered. We can reach you whenever we want. And the scariest part? No one's even touched him. One night, Pelham's phone rings at 2 a.m. He jolts awake, grabs it off the nightstand. Hello? Silence. Not dead air. He can hear breathing. Who is this? The line goes dead. Susan stirs beside him. Who was it? Wrong number, he says. But his heart is pounding. The next morning, Pelham calls Chief Judge Brennan. I need that transfer, Harold. Now. Richard, I don't care how it looks. I don't care what questions it raises. I need out of this case. Brennan exhales. What happened? Nothing happened. That's the problem. Nothing's happening. But I know it's coming. I can feel it. That's not evidence, Richard. That's paranoia. Then call it paranoia. But get me out. Brennan is quiet for a long moment. There's a spot opening in the Northern District. Smaller docket. Quieter cases. I can put your name in. But it'll take time. How much time? A month, maybe 2. Pelham closes his eyes. Fine. Do it. That afternoon, Pelham locks his office door and sits in the dark. He thinks about his career. 23 years. Hundreds of cases. Thousands of decisions. And now, because of one bail hearing, he's running. He didn't even take money. Mitchell never paid him. Never offered. Just threatened. And Pelham folded. Because he's not a brave man. He's a comfortable man. A man who likes his house and his routine and his illusion of control. And Big Meech saw that. Saw it in one glance, across a courtroom. And decided to remind him what power really looks like. 2 weeks later, the word spreads. Not officially. Not in any filing or public record. But people in the system start hearing. Judge Pelham requested a transfer. Mid-case. No explanation. Lawyers whisper about it in courthouse hallways. Clerks gossip. Even the marshals talk. And the story that emerges, whether true or not, is simple. Big Meech got to him. Not with violence. Not with money. With presence. With the quiet, patient pressure of a man who knows that fear is more powerful than force. Meech hears about it a week later. Terrell visits. Sits across from him in the visitation room. Smiles. Judge is asking for a transfer. Meech doesn't react. Just nods. When? Month or 2. He's spooked. Good. You want us to back off. Meech thinks about it. No. Let him feel it a little longer. Let him know that running doesn't mean it stops. Terrell grins. You're a patient man, Meech. Patience is power, Meech says. Anyone can throw a punch. Takes strength to just stand there and let someone else break themselves. That night, back in his cell, Meech lies on his bunk and stares at the ceiling. He thinks about Pelham, about the fear in his eyes, about the way he'll spend the next month looking over his shoulder, wondering if today's the day something happens. But nothing will happen, because Meech doesn't need it to. The point was never to hurt the judge. The point was to remind him, and everyone watching, that respect isn't given by a gavel. It's earned. And once you have it, not even walls can take it away. 6 weeks after the bail hearing, Judge Richard Pelham walks into the federal courthouse for the last time. Not the last time ever. Just the last time as the judge on United States v. Demetrius Flenory. His replacement, Judge Patricia Lawson, is already reviewing the case files. She's younger, sharper, the kind of judge who doesn't scare easy. Pelham briefs her in his chambers, goes through the discovery, the witness lists, the procedural history. She listens, takes notes, asks good questions. Then she looks at him. Why'd you really ask for the transfer, Richard? He doesn't look up from the file. Personal reasons. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She studies him for a moment. Sees something in his face she doesn't like. But she doesn't push. All right, she says. I'll take it from here. Pelham nods. Stands. Shakes her hand. And walks out. That afternoon, the formal order is filed. Judge Richard Pelham recused from case due to reassignment. Judge Patricia Lawson assigned effective immediately. No explanation. No detail. Just the bureaucratic language of a system moving forward. But everyone involved knows what it really means. The prosecutors know. The defense knows. And Big Meech, sitting in his cell when his lawyer tells him, knows. New judge, David Chesnoff says. Lawson, she's fair. This might actually help us. Meech nods. But he's not thinking about the case anymore. He's thinking about the message. Because this was never about bail. Never about one hearing. It was about proving a point. That power doesn't live in a courtroom. It lives in respect, in loyalty, in the quiet understanding that some men don't break, even when you lock them up. And Judge Pelham, wherever he ends up, will remember that for the rest of his life. 3 months after Judge Pelham's transfer, Big Meech sits in the same cell, same dripping sink, same bolted bed, same 8x10 box of concrete and steel. Nothing about his physical reality has changed, but everything else has. The story spreads like smoke. Not in headlines, not in official reports, in barbershops, in recording studios, in late-night conversations between people who understand how power really moves. Big Meech made a judge run, didn't touch him, didn't threaten him, just reminded him who he was, did it from a cell. The details get exaggerated. Some people say Meech had people follow the judge's family. Others say he had dirt on him, blackmail material that would have destroyed his career. None of it's true, but the truth doesn't matter as much as the perception. And the perception is clear. Big Meech is still Big Meech, locked up or not. Inside, Meech's days settle into rhythm. He reads, works out, takes calls, writes letters, but mostly he listens. The young guys coming in, kids like Javon, they seek him out now. Not loudly, not obviously, but they find ways to cross paths, to ask questions, to learn. Meech doesn't preach, doesn't lecture. He just tells them what he learned the hard way. This life, he says to Javon one day in the yard, it's not about how much money you make or how many people fear you. It's about respect. And respect doesn't come from violence. It comes from consistency, from keeping your word, from building something that lasts longer than you do. Javon listens, nods. But you're in here, he says. So did it work? Meech looks at him. I'm in here because the game changed. Feds got smarter. Technology got better. But the principles, those don't change. You can lock up a man. You can't lock up an idea. What idea? That you can come from nothing and build something that matters. That you can move with power and still have principles. That respect is earned, not taken. Javon thinks about that. You think I can do that? Meech looks at him for a long moment. I think you can do whatever you decide to do. Just make sure it's something you can live with when you're sitting in a cell like this, looking back. Outside, the BMF network continues. Not the way it was. The feds hit it hard, arrested dozens, seized assets, tore apart the infrastructure, but the culture remains. The music, the fashion, the idea that you can rise from the streets and touch the sky. Artists still reference BMF in their lyrics, still wear the brand, still talk about Meech and his brother like they're legends, because, in a way, they are. Not because of what they sold, because of how they moved, with vision, with style, with a refusal to be small. Judge Pelham, now stationed in a quieter district, tries to forget. He takes smaller cases, keeps his head down, doesn't make waves. But some nights, lying in bed, he still thinks about that courtroom, about the way Big Meech looked at him, calm, patient, knowing, like he could see exactly who Pelham was. And Pelham wonders if he made the right choice. Not about the transfer, he knows he had no choice there, but about the bail hearing, about letting Mitchell walk into his chambers and dictate his decision, about choosing fear over principle. He tells himself he had no choice, but deep down, he knows that's a lie. Everyone has a choice. He just chose wrong. And Big Meech reminded him of that without saying a word. 2 years later, Meech's case goes to trial. Judge Lawson presides. Fair, firm, no games. The evidence is overwhelming. The feds built their case carefully. Wiretaps, witnesses, financial records. Meech's lawyers fight hard. But there's only so much you can do when the government brings the full weight of the system down. The jury deliberates for 3 days. Guilty on all counts. Meech doesn't react, just nods, like he knew it was coming. At sentencing, Judge Lawson gives him 30 years. Mr. Flenory, she says, you built an empire, but you built it on illegal activity that harmed countless communities. This sentence reflects the severity of your actions. Meech stands. Your Honor, I respect your decision. but I want to say something for the record. Lawson nods. I'm not going to stand here and pretend I didn't do what I did. I made choices, some good, some bad. But everything I built it from nothing. I gave people opportunities. I created culture. I moved with principles, even when the game didn't reward that. He pauses. 30 years is a long time. But I'll do it the same way I did everything else. With my head up. And when I get out, if I get out, I'll still be who I am. Because you can take my freedom. You can take my money. But you can't take my name. The courtroom is silent. Judge Lawson looks at him. I hope you use that time to reflect, Mr. Flenory. I will, Your Honor, but not the way you think. Back in the cell, after the sentencing, Meech sits alone. 30 years. He'll be in his 60s when he gets out. Maybe older if the appeals don't work. Most men would break under that weight. But Meech doesn't feel broken. He feels clear, because he knows something most people don't. Legacy isn't about how long you're free. It's about what you leave behind. The people you influenced, the culture you created, the way you moved through the world. And years from now, decades from now, people will still be talking about Big Meech. Not because of the drugs, not because of the money, because of the way he carried himself, with respect, with vision, with a refusal to be forgotten. 10 years later, a kid in Atlanta couldn't have been more than 16 stands in front of a muraled wall. The mural shows Big Meech, larger than life, dressed sharp, eyes forward. The kid takes a photo, posts it online. Caption: real ones never die. They just become legends. It gets 10,000 likes in an hour. Because that's the thing about legacy. You can lock a man up, but you can't lock up what he represents. And Big Meech, sitting in a federal prison, hair graying, body older but mind still sharp, knows that. He doesn't need to be free to be powerful. He just needs people to remember. And they will, because some names don't fade. They echo, through concrete, through steel, through time itself. And long after the judge, who denied his bail, is forgotten, long after the prosecutors who convicted him retire, long after the prison walls crumble, people will still say the name, Big Meech, not as a criminal, as a reminder that power isn't given. It's built, one decision at a time, one principle at a time, one moment of calm dominance that changes everything, even from a cell.